thank you all for your submissions and indeed for the work that you do on a daily basis on this really, really important issue. I've read all of your submissions, but also followed your work. And as a former city councillor, I guess I'm most familiar with Dublin City Council's workings. But thank you all, really appreciate it. Just in terms of this issue, I suppose, from our perspective, the housing crisis requires us to sweat every single asset, and using existing built property is obviously the most sustainable, but the most efficient as well way for us to increase the housing stock. And so it's a huge priority for us. And your submissions make it very clear that this is not a simple issue. It's complex and a nuanced approaches. It needs to be taken to it. But I also think that, and Waterford's example in terms of the repair and lease scheme really shows how very significant progress can be made when there is a focused, proactive approach. In terms of the submission from Dublin City Council, I would suggest that we need to come back to the urban regeneration of the public spaces and the public buildings. It's a piece of work all on its own. So my questions are really to do with the private properties. And Dublin City Council undertook a street survey in 2017 of 4 electoral divisions. I'm just wondering which the 4 were, because your contribution here is very stark. It basically says that there's almost nothing there, and that's not the lived experience in the city. The lived experience in the city is that we've an awful lot of dereliction. We've got far too much vacancy and dereliction, and I appreciate there is a distinct difference between both. But from the City Council's perspective, there's 162 electoral divisions, so I'd be interested to know which 4 were actually surveyed. But I would also like to know, is the City Council taking a coordinated, proactive approach to using all of the tools available to it? Because if, from an outsider's perspective, somebody living in the city, we see it as being, there's CPO powers, there's vacancy tax, there's a derelict register, there's a vacancy register, there's dangerous buildings. But are they working in a coordinated fashion? And are they working in a proactive way to turn the vacant properties into habitable properties and inhabited properties? Gormagad.
That's to Mr. Shakespeare, Senator Fitzpatrick, is it?
Well, whichever of the 4 witnesses, and I appreciate all of their attendance. But yes, from City Council, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul Clegg from the City Council. The survey that was carried out in 2017 concentrated on just on 4 DDs. They were in Ballybock, Rotunda, Rathmines West, Rathmines West D, and Rathmines West F. And I suppose what we looked at, we were looking at the census information at the time, and really what we were trying to drill down to see exactly how many dwellings could be used for the repair and renew scheme. The census, remember, at the time is looking at vacancy or occupancy at a particular point in time. Now we know, having discussed in detail with the enumerators, that an awful lot of effort is put into determining vacancy at that particular time. But that's the definition of vacancy for the purposes of the census. What we were trying to drill down was how many of the vacant properties, and we saw that about 16 vacant properties having drilled down, and say 5 of them would have been protected structures, which wouldn't be suitable to be brought in as social homes. So what we were trying to determine, how many of these would be used as social homes. A few of them were commercial units as well. And I suppose just in terms of asking, is there a coordinated approach? Yeah, there is. For instance, for derelict sites, I think we need to remember and look to what the definition of a derelict site is. And dereliction is about where land detracts to a material degree from amenity or character. We have about 400 active derelict sites that we keep an eye on. We've 75 sites on the derelict sites register. We find that, in our experience, people don't deliberately let their properties go into dereliction. There's title issues, there's probate issues, there's owners that have personal difficulties, there's lack of finance. And we find that engagement helps a lot with dealing with dereliction. So that's why we say we've 75 on the register for which we raise levies. For the vacant sites register, we have 45 sites on the vacant homes register, and we have about 200 and odd active sites. So there's a big coordinated approach on our part. In terms of the CPOs, we have 4 active CPOs. We haven't, as such, targeted individual CPOs on particular dwellings. However, we do welcome when we do have a focus from the census, and as a result of, say, the data that will come out from the analysis by the revenue commissioners on the local property tax, we will have a clearer idea about what vacant homes that we have. Now, I've only been talking about the residential end of things. I haven't been talking about commercial vacancy. But we are anxious to see what the actual level of vacancy is, so that we can use the powers that we have under the repair and use scheme and the lease scheme as well. Like, we won't be found wanting in taking whatever action is required once there's a clear analysis of the data.
Paul, thank you for your reply. Chair, if I can just come in with one supplementary question. Paul, thank you for that. And can I just ask, the dangerous buildings section, when they are called out and they undertake work on a building in Dublin City, do they automatically refer that property to the derelict site section in Dublin City Council, or the vacant site section, or both? And the last part of the question is the percentage of housing in the housing needs assessment that Dublin City Council anticipates getting from renovating existing built infrastructure.
Well, there would be ongoing consultation, yes, between our dangerous building section, particularly in relation to what action we can take under derelict sites. So there would be ongoing, in interaction between us. Sorry, Senator, the last question.
Just in terms of Dublin City Council's housing needs assessment that it's completing, under Housing for All, what percentage of the housing that it projects to deliver and need does it anticipate deriving from renovating existing built properties?
I might ask John or Dave to come in on that one.
Dave Dinnigan, Dublin City Council Housing. The current model of the HMDA doesn't include that in its assessment, Senator. It's not included in the current model.
Okay.
Does that mean that Dublin City Council
Senator
targeting?
Senator Fitzpatrick, be as brief as you can now, because you're up to 8 minutes there now.
Apologies, Chair. I just want to clarify the reply, Chair. Does that mean Dublin City Council isn't targeting to derive any additional homes, formally targeting additional homes from renovating existing vacant properties?
No, Senator. Just because it's not included in the HMDA model doesn't mean that we don't have other methodologies to do that. So, as mentioned earlier, one of the contributors, we've a vacant homes officer that works with our various teams here in housing and legals. And then we use, obviously, our extensive area management presence locally to identify them. So we probably a better, understanding of that and a better methodology, because it's not just fixed at one time, it's continuous.